self-depreciation. And self-depreciation is one of those things that it's like a subtle put-down that we do to ourselves that so often we're not even aware or conscious of just what we're doing. And so many times we fail to realize that when we get into comparisons, that comparisons becomes the greater issue in our mind about what it is that we believe about ourselves and what it is and how we feel about our place in the universe or our place in the scheme of life in which we're living. So when we think about how do we compare ourselves in subtle ways, so many times we look at the news and we see things that are going on in the world and we see that certain people are heralded as superior or they get a lot of attention for whatever it is that they've accomplished. And we start thinking that somehow their lives are more exciting or more glamorous or more fulfilling than our lives. So many times people get caught in all kinds of limited thinking, and they isolate themselves from the very good that's available to them because they don't see themselves as having the same abilities and the same capabilities of living a more joyous life, a more abundant life, or a more creative life, or a life that's filled with more enthusiasm about life. The great Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity movement, even in his 90s, he said that he had a great zest for life, So we must think about the things that we look forward to, the things that we want to do, and the things that we want to accomplish, because it's that feeling of doing that greater thing still that instills within us a greater strength, not only in our mind, but in our body as well, a greater feeling of persistence and a greater feeling of consistency and feeling enthusiasm for life and feeling that life is worth living. And so we start realizing in our mind that we must find something that's appealing to us, attractive to us, that gives us that feeling of enthusiasm. And we must be cautious about what it is that we think of ourselves and what we are comparing ourselves to, and start to realize that we must begin to believe in ourselves in a greater way, and we must realize that there's something within us that's just as equal to anyone else, just as equal to it, and that whatever we're choosing to do with our life, that we do them to the very best of our abilities, and with a feeling of joy in our heart, that we'll start feeling that greater capacity to take on even greater things still. Jesus said, I've come to tell you that you may have life and you may have it more abundantly, but a lot of people don't believe in the abundant life anymore. A lot of people believe that there's those that have and there's those that have not, and that's pretty much set in life as the way it's going to be, and so they find themselves going through life with a dullness in their mind and a dullness within their heart that somehow takes away all the joy of living. And, we're here to live every day. When we wake up in the morning, that means that we're to wake up to a world in which there's things that are wonderful and marvelous for us to enjoy and for us to take into our life experience. But we're not going to do that if we let the dullness, if we let the comparisons, if we let the limited thinking, if we let that feeling of not being equal, and we focus on superiorities and inferiorities and all that in our mind by thinking about ourselves as somehow inferior or less than, or focusing on the things that we feel we can't do rather than focusing on the things that we can do. And as we focus on those things that we can do and we take one step at a time in the right direction towards doing something greater, something more wonderful, then we shall be able to realize just that. But we must set it into motion. We must have the faith to set those things into motion that will give us that greater thing still for each and every one of us to realize for ourselves. Sometimes people just don't know. I remember there was a program on Oprah Winfrey one time where she asked her audience, what would make them happy. And so many of the people didn't even know what it would be that would make them happy. And they couldn't say they were exactly happy, but they couldn't say that they weren't. So they were stuck in that dullness of life, that dullness that happens when when we're not allowing ourselves to find something that appeals to us. We've got to find something that appeals to us. We have to be fascinated with life. I'm going to repeat something here from the great Reverend Ike. He says, God in you has given you the power of fascination to use, to be, to do, and to have all the good that you desire. Now, what is this God in you? It's that part of God that's incarnated within each and every one of us. We all have intelligence. That's intelligence is God. We all have a spirit, that is a mind, and so we can direct that spirit and to whatever it is that we want to direct it to, because spirit is just a matter of finding the right attitude towards life and having the right attitude towards those things that concern us, and that right attitude is always seeking to realize more of the good. And we have the power of faith. We have the power of faith to connect with this love and law of life, this ability to sow into our mind and reap some wonderful things if we just persistently take into our mind that there's something greater for us to do, something greater for us to be, something greater for us to have and to know. So, but we have to believe in it. We have to believe in it, and that belief must begin with a belief in ourselves. Must begin with a belief in ourselves. So let's go back to Reverend Ike's words. This is from his book, Reverend Ike's Secrets. He says, God in you has given you the power of fascination to use, to be, to do, and have all the good you desire. It is up to you to determine how you will use it. Now, this may sound strange, he says, but it's true. There is power in fascination. It has power because whatever you're fascinated with, you become. Whatever you're fascinated with, you become. You automatically draw that which you are fascinated with unto you, be it good or evil. Whatever you are fascinated with will come into your experience. Now, he's just really rephrasing something that the Mastermind Jesus told us some, 2,000 some odd years ago, that seek and we shall find. Seek and you shall find, he said. So we must seek into our mind what it is that will make us feel thrilled about life, and will make us want to jump out of bed in the morning and be enthusiastic about living this day. But we have to be fascinated with something, find something that appeals to us, start being fascinated with the idea that there's something within us that's greater than anything we've experienced before. Start realizing that whatever it is that brought us to life in this day, that something within us, that power that surrounds us, presses against us, is above us, below us, embracing us in its presence and in its power and its intelligence, is seeking for us to make use of those skills, abilities, talents, and our divine imagination to realize something new and something more. But we have to stop the self-depreciation. We have to stop the little subtle put-downs that we do to ourselves. Stop comparing ourselves to someone else. I was fascinated with the news and from England about the new baby being born, and how the news media just really covered every moment practically that was going on until the baby was born. And even on the news stream on my smartphone, they had a whole section that was devoted to the baby being born in Britain. And I thought, isn't this fascinating? So many times we hold other people up as being more important. We hold other people up as being of a greater quality or a greater whatever than we are. And we look at this and we think about all the things that we've done in this world to create something that gives us concepts to have been not too wonderful for us. We set people up to be perfect. We set up popes and saints, and we set up presidents, and we set up kings and queens as being more perfect than we are. And look to them. We're always looking outside of ourselves to someone else to set the stage for what it is that we're to do, what it is that we're to be attracted to, or what we find attractive. And we fail to realize that there's something within us, within our own mind, our heart, and our soul, within our own spirit, that's seeking to create its own unique expression of life, not to imitate anyone else's, not to look out to someone else, but to look within our own mind for what it is that we're to do, and that we are just as important as anyone that carries the label of king or queen or president or pope or saint or whatever it may be. But we must take that into our mind as the truth for us. What one can do, all can do. That's why Jesus said, these things I do, you can do too. If you set your mind on it, you can do it. If you become focused on it, it will happen for you. But greater things still shall you do. Even if you don't choose to do the things that I do, he was telling us, greater things than you, that part of intelligence, God. And as you keep faith with that, then your capacity to do and to be and to have becomes enlarged. You enlarge your capacity. You cultivate that consciousness of knowing that there's something more to receive, something more to do, something more to accept, and something more to know. And you elevate your thinking to that level where the good things begin to just kind of automatically show up in your life. But we must believe it, and we must stop the self-depreciation or the self-condemnation. And once again, those words from Ernest Holmes, the mystical Ernest Holmes, he tells us self-condemnation is always destructive and should never be indulged in by anyone. It is always a mistake. It is always a mistake. There is no question but that all of us have done that which is not for the best, because all have fallen short of the divine calling. But we must realize it shall be done unto us according to our faith, just as Jesus tells us in the Gospel of Matthew 9:21 or 9:29. And so if we stop and we renew our mind and we change our thinking, just as Jesus said, turn the other cheek, look at our situations in a different way, look at our life in a different way, and start seeing that not only are we capable, not only do we have the capacity to do more, be more, have more, but God is always seeking for us to recognize this is the truth about us so that we can draw into our life experience those greater things. The mystical Buddha said, what we think, we become. What we think, we become. So how do we think? What are we thinking about? What are the thoughts that go into our mind? What is it that we think about when we see someone that we feel is somehow got a greater life experience than we have? How many times do people want to think about what it is that goes through our mind that negates our life? How often do we think about what goes through our mind that negates our life rather than think about what it is that goes through our mind that uplifts our life, that gives us a greater feeling, a greater self-esteem, a greater recognition of just what it is that we are about and what it is that we are doing. And so many times we find ourselves listening to the world rather than listening to the Spirit within us. That's why we read in the Holy Scriptures to incline your ear and come to me, because if we're going to have that transformation, if we're going to have that true renewing of our mind, we must stop listening to the world. Just as Jesus said, go into thy closet and shut out the world. In other words, go into your mind, in the silence of your mind, and listen for those things that will come to you that will give you a greater feeling of being one with that Spirit and the power and the intelligence that's necessary for you to accomplish those things that you seek to accomplish. We're here to be alive to life. We're here to be active in life. We're here to be doing things, having joyful experiences. We're here to feel the promises of the Scriptures that we can have that abundant life, that we can have that joyful life, that God does give us each day all things necessary for us to realize the desires of our heart, to take into our mind and take into our soul that truth that God has created us and is always expressing through us, that God never leaves us, that God is always this present help in time of need, and that need doesn't have to be something that's part of a crisis or an emergency or an urgency, but that need to express more of who we truly are, that need to release that imprisoned splendor within our heart and our soul, within our creative mind, as an expression of all of our skills and talents and abilities and capabilities into the world. You know, people talk about being prosperous. Well, being prosperous is knowing that you're on the right path to realizing the good that you desire, that you're in that right path to where you can freely give and freely receive. Just as Jesus said, that's the way life should be. Freely give, freely receive. As we sow, so shall we reap. Just allow ourselves to realize that there's a cause going on in our mind that will give us the effects in our outer world of what it is that we believe and hold true for ourselves on our inner world, in our mind, in our heart, and in our soul. Let's look at these words from the mystical Ernest Holmes. There is a law of unfoldment in all of us. Unfoldment. What are we unfolding right now? What are we thinking about ourselves? We're unfolding something. So what is it? What's going on in our mind? Are we feeling that love of God moving through us? Are we feeling that life pulsating through our body, mind, and spirit? Because that's what it has to do. We don't want to just feel the spirit in our mind. We want to feel it in our body. We want to feel it in our body of affairs, the things that concern us. We want to feel that excitement and that joy, that enthusiasm that brings all things together for our good. Because we know that's always what God is doing. God is always working all things to our good if we let Him, And people will say, oh, God helps those who help themselves. Well, no, God helps those who let Him, who let God, who let the power and the intelligence and spirit enter into their mind so that they know what to do and how to do it. You know, we could work 45 hours a week or 55 hours a week and work ourselves into exhaustion and still live in poverty and still live in a stark life, or we can go to the spirit in our mind and seek that idea that's ours, seek that thing that is ours, and know that we are capable, we are deserving of receiving that right idea. And then when we receive that right idea, we have all things necessary. We have that strength of spirit, that strength of faith, to act on that right idea, to bring those things into our life experience that will prosper us, heal us, bless us, keep us healthy and happy, fill us with a joy of expressing the creativity of our mind out into the world in which we live. So many of us, we put ourselves down. You know, we make heroes out of sports figures and heroes out of celebrities and movie stars, and we make heroes out of people that are just like you and me. Everybody in the world puts their pants on one leg at a time. Everybody in the world puts their shoes on one shoe at a time. We all have that equality of spirit within us. We all have that equality of being able to draw from the mind, the spirit, the intelligence, and the power of God. All that's necessary for us to do those things that are ours to do, that bring us into that abundant life, that joyful life, that wonderful life. And so many times people get stuck. They get stuck. Just like they say, oh, well, Jesus could walk on water, or Jesus turned the water into wine, or Jesus healed the people. You know, I can't do any of that. Well, nobody's calling you to do that. Until you're called to do it, it's not yours to do. Our thing today may be, you know, maybe we're a teacher and we're just supposed to teach our classes and enlighten the minds of our students to love education and to love knowledge. Or maybe we're a plumber and we're to go out and do our work and to be cooperative and friendly and be on time and charge a reasonable fee and have people look at our work as something wonderful and have people look at us as someone who knows what they're doing and knows that they're somebody that they want to bring back into their experience, bring back into their workplace or their home to do even more work. Whatever it is that we are called to do, whatever it is that comes to us today, if we take that and we realize that we're capable of doing that and more still, that and more still, that we can go the extra mile, if not in physical activity, at least in our mind, and we will find ourselves going that extra step in our life. We'll find ourselves doing, being, and having that more still as we become fascinated with the truth that we are in control, that we're in charge of our life experience. We can change our thinking. We can change our life. We can change our thought patterns to that which tells us, guides us to that which is more incredible, more wonderful, more tremendously rewarding than what maybe our life experiences have been in the past. There is a law of unfoldment in all of us, Ernest Holmes tells us, which says we can advance only by going from where we are to the place we would like to be. This is not because the law of God is limited, but because it is law. It is law. As we unfold in our mentality, the law automatically reacts to us. And how does it react to us? By corresponding to that which we believe to be true, by corresponding to the actions that we take. And we go back and we read where the mystical Buddha tells us what we think we become, and Jesus tells us is done unto you according to our faith. And Ernest Holmes tells us self-condemnation is always destructive and should never be indulged in by anyone. It is always a mistake. Why? Because it will stop us from believing in ourselves. All those little subtle put-downs. You know, we look in the mirror and say, oh, I need to lose some weight. I'm too fat. Or we look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm getting old. I'm looking old. Or we think about our birthday and say, oh, now I'm getting older. I'm becoming aged, or whatever those things may be in our mind. Or I don't have the education to do this. Well, if you have God, if you have faith, if you have the Spirit, you can draw on the intelligence of God to know what it is that you can do. And whatever knowledge you've gained from the world, you can always gain more knowledge from the world and from the Spirit to do whatever it is that comes to you to do if you're willing to do it, if we're willing to do it. Dr. Frank Richelieu tells us it is not the problems in our life that matter, it is our response to them. It is not the problems in our life that matter, it is our response to them. Any problem is a secondary thing. We can let it either tear us to pieces, or we can let it bind us more closely to the power that is within us, to bind us more closely to the power that is in us. We can let it negate our living, or we can let it stimulate us to a greater expression of living. It's up to us. It's up to us. But we must get in control of our mind. We must be conscious of what we're thinking. Are we thinking? Are we thinking that we're capable? Are we thinking that life is good, that God is always with us? Are we thinking that we can use our mind to draw into our life experience the greater things? Think about these words. Today I recognize the abundance of life. I animate everything in my experience with this idea. I remember only the good, I accept only the good, I expect only the good, and this is all I shall experience. I give thanks that this good is flowing in ever-increasing volumes into my life. I say to my mind, there is good enough to go around. I do not withhold that good from myself or others, but proclaim that spiritual substance is forever flowing to each and to all as daily supply. So I say to myself, let's begin to believe in our prayers. And what is our prayer? Our prayer is just affirming that God is working all things to our good, that God is drawing to us, supplying us with all things necessary to enjoy this thing called life in a greater way. To enjoy this thing called life in a greater way. But we have to get rid of the self-depreciation, the subtle put-downs, the self-condemnations. We have to get rid of the comparisons. We have to let all that old noise and nonsense go and become more fascinated with who we are, more fascinated with our mind. Let ourselves sit in the silence and let our mind just be free to accept more of the ideas and the impressions from the Spirit and the intelligence and the power of God. And let those ideas that are to prosper us, heal us, to bless us, to give us a greater ability to express our creativities, our abilities and our skills, to move through our mind, to let that all become the truth for us every day, that we are an inlet for the Spirit of God to create through us as an outlet of a greater life expression, Just remind yourself every day that just as the wave is connected to the ocean and has all the attributes of the ocean, that we are connected to God in spirit, and we have all the attributes of the Spirit that are necessary for us to live life to the fullest, to live life with a feeling of joy and an anticipation and expectation of a greater good. Say to yourself, good and more good is mine, and ever-increasing good is mine. Everywhere I go, I see this good. I'm fascinated by it. I look with wonder at how God works all things to my good, and I am thankful. I am thankful for every good blessing that comes to me today, knowing that God is responding to me by corresponding to my faith and my belief that with God, all good things are possible. And so it is.